Hey, what's going on, traders? Welcome back to the channel today. Thank you guys so much for tuning back in. I hope you guys have all been enjoying your Monday and we're all able to end on a green note. But as usual, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into a recap and let you guys know exactly how my day trading did go today. And what you guys will notice is I am trading with real money this week, right? I know you guys have noticed that the past few weeks I have been trading on a simulation account, right? And it would say so up here, but I am, feel comfortable enough to switch back on to real money. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And yeah, I'm excited to get right into it. So let's go ahead and take a look at today's recap. So as you guys can tell from your screens, right, today was a red day in terms of my day trading. I was down $15 on SQQQ and another $5 on TQQQ. And what you guys will notice is there were lots of orders today, right? So I was buying in and out quite a lot. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through exactly what was going on in my head, right? So heading into the market today, if you guys haven't heard already, the market did pretty well today, right? So it had a pretty big green day today from the lows of where it closed at last week. Now, last week, right, the market was pretty bloody. And so we were seeing it start to recover during this pre-market session, right? What you guys will notice is all of pre-market, right? It was actually riding this green SMA lineup and just indicating signs of an uptrend, right? How do I know it's indicating signs of an uptrend? It was trading between the middle and top VWAP, right? And it was making these higher highs and higher lows. So every time it ended up going higher, it did so, right? It ended up breaking the previous resistance that it had and continued to go higher, right? Then every time it would, start to pull back a bit, it would never pull back as much as it did before, right? That's what I mean by these higher highs and higher lows. And what you guys will notice is, right, this thing started to really pick up steam during this, pre-market session. And it wasn't until right around market open, right, where you see these increase in volume bars, that's when lots of buyers entered the market. And what did we, notice happen? Well, the market itself was already up a decent amount. So during pre-market, it ended up gapping up to all the way up here, right? So over 11,000 for the NASDAQ future, right? And so if you guys take a look at, from where it closed that Friday, right? It closed down all the way down here. And so the fact that we were actually able, or sorry, over here. And the fact that we were actually able to, have this nice recovery pre-market was a really good sign. And ultimately, right, we saw this thing continue to shoot up on the day. And so that's why, if you guys can tell, the first trades I was taking on the day were on TQQQ, right? And so the reason why I was paying attention to TQQQ was, well, direction was obviously in its favor. It's been pretty oversold in the sense that, if you take a look the past 10 days even, right, we've been selling off quite a bit. And so after these big sell-offs, we'll typically approach areas of consolidation where it's pretty much trading sideways, right, for a brief period of time. So, what you guys will notice is it's no longer selling off aggressively the way it was here, but it's more trading between the top VWAP and bottom VWAP, right? It'll kind of zigzag its way in between, trading in between those levels. And, it's trading more sideways than it is selling off. So at this point, it was consolidating, trading sideways. We did see this thing tank, right? Ended up recovering. And so now we are still in that consolidation phase where we ended up testing the previous support, right? It acted as a support. It ended up riding up on the day. And as we noticed, right, this thing did not end up getting rejected. It continued to climb on the day. And so where we're at right now in the after hour market, we're right around this area. So we are pretty overextended compared to where the previous resistance was at, right? But that doesn't mean we have to get rejected here. We can break this resistance and end up, crossing up, or we can actually, start to get rejected. So we are just going to have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, as you guys can tell, right, I was paying attention to TQQQ. I bought in at 638. So I didn't just buy in initially when I saw this thing gap up because I felt like it was pretty overextended. But, given the fact that we were still seeing those higher highs and the momentum was there, I decided to buy into TQQQ. I was averaging up a bit, but as you guys can tell, right after market open, so right around this area is when market open, it did gap up for a bit, but it would have these strong pullbacks. And on these pullbacks is when I would end up having to cut some of my loss on TQQQ, right? So I bought into TQQQ, I would average up as it's going my way, but as it would pull on back, I would have to, sell out of some shares, in case it were to end up reversing on the day, right? So I didn't want to be hopeful and think that this thing was going to just continuously run on the day. And so I wanted to make sure that when I was averaging up, I did my part in, downsizing when it started to go south, right? So a big amount of the day was mainly due to the fact that I was trading with direction, right? But it was really struggling right around this area. And so majority of my day, like I was saying, was just pretty much entering the green, and then as this thing would pull on back, entering the and then going back to red, right? So it was just a battle for me today of going from green to red, right? And as it started to pull back, I saw more potential in SQQQ at this point. Why? Well, this thing was consolidating and no longer wanted to run. It was very clear on that. There was a strong resistance level. And as this thing started to sell off, right? I thought that we were going to change direction on the day. But ultimately, what ended up happening is this thing continued to run, right? It ended up pushing up. I believe I bought into SQQQ later on in the day. So what you guys will notice is I was focusing completely on TQQQ, and later on in the day I ended up switching to SQQQ. Now you may be asking, why is that? Well, I just explained it. There was lots of momentum, right? It looked good right at market open, but then it really struggled to make these higher highs and higher lows, and we ultimately ended up getting rejected and broke below the EMA, right? So that's why I felt like the momentum really wasn't there for this thing to take it, to form higher highs on the day, but that's obviously was a wrong assumption, right? As you guys can see, this thing ended up slowly climbing on the day, and and ultimately ended up making new highs on the day from where we're at right now, right, to where market closed at. And so, a question I wanted to ask myself was it necessarily the worst trade to have gotten into SQQQ after seeing this, right? And so, I personally still am okay with the loss that I took today, right? It was only a $20 loss trading with $10,000, right? So, 0.2%, right, of a percent. And so, I was able to manage my losses effectively today, right? It could have been a lot worse. And just the fact that it struggled so hard to continuously run on the day here, right? I felt it was in my best interest to start a focus on SQQQ. Although it didn't go my way, right? Getting into TQQQ wasn't, there wasn't any crazy margin to be made after this little push that it had at market open, right? Because what you guys will notice is it formed a strong resistance right around these levels, right? Anytime it would approach these levels, it would pull on back, and it just really struggled to break above these levels. So because of that, I didn't feel comfortable getting into TQQQ, thinking that this thing was going to continue to run, right? You guys have to be aware of the fact that this thing was up like over 3.5% on the day, I believe, right? And just that alone is just huge. It's a big day for it, and we typically don't see this type of day often where it's up this much by market open, right? And so that's ultimately what we did end up seeing, right? I was focusing on SQQQ because of the fact that there was a strong resistance right around this area, and we have, around these general areas tended to sell off aggressively, right? So I was personally thinking that because we have been trading sideways, right? As it once gapped up around this area this morning, as it did, one time before, that we were going to potentially struggle and see some form of pullback. Now, this obviously didn't have to happen, as it ultimately didn't happen, right? It didn't end up playing out the way I thought. But as I mentioned, I didn't buy into SQQQ with a big dollar amount, right? I bought into with a comfortable position size, where as this thing started to sell off, right? I would get excited and think about adding to it, but ultimately, as it would find a support and continue to uptrend, right? It didn't devastate me being an SQQQ, right? It didn't devastate me because of the fact that I knew I didn't get in with a large dollar amount because direction was not in my favor. If I saw this thing climb back up here, continue to struggle, and it really started to sell off, so no longer was it making these higher highs and higher lows, but it was doing the exact opposite, right? I wanted to see this thing consolidate and start to make these lower lows and lower highs, where it kind of, rather than ride this EMA line up, it starts doing the exact opposite and it rides it down. Kind of like how it was doing here, where once it crossed back up to the EMA, it got rejected, right? So that's what I wanted to see in order for me to continue to add to my SQQ position. But that's ultimately not what ended up happening, right? Direction was not in my favor. I took a risk just by getting into the inverse ETF, and it ultimately didn't end up playing out, right, according to how I thought it would. But that's not to say that it was a bad trade, right? As I mentioned, there was a reason behind why I wanted to switch direction on the day, and it just didn't play out. But, I just have to make sure I'm doing things that are in my best interest. I thought that there was more potential for this thing to sell off, right? More margin for if it sold off to profit than if it were to continue to climb. And so that's why I decided again to SQQQ. But regarding, where direction's headed on the NASDAQ, we have been, in a very, very bearish downtrend pattern, right? Where we will typically tend to have these little bits of climbs, right? Where we start to recover, but once it eventually runs out of steam, it'll sell off very aggressively and make these lower lows and lower highs, right? We saw it happen once more where it started to recover and then we've just been getting absolutely hammered, right? The market's been tanking, making these lower lows and lower highs. And so, we have to ask ourselves what or where is direction going to be headed next, right? Are we going to see this thing start to correct itself, the way it tends to, whenever it does sell off a decent amount, or are we going to continue to sell off at these areas? We just need to follow up with the market, right? And just take it day by day and see what ends up happening. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning back in as usual, right? And one last thing I did want to mention is Tesla, right? So I was still able to end green on the day, although it was a red day in terms of day trading. I was up $140 off Tesla alone, right, on the day, and that's because of the fact that it was up 7%, right? And so for any of you who have been following Tesla, what you guys will know is it's been absolutely dying the past, even 20 days. 20 days ago, this thing was trading at $313. It hit lows of $203, right? Last week. Isn't that absolutely crazy? So the fact that it's dropped a ridiculous amount within a short period of time makes me excited to start to buy more shares at these lower levels. And that's what I ultimately ended up doing, right? So the market ended up tanking. I picked up 2 more shares at 205, as you guys can see. And we are trading at around $220 a share now, right? So it had a really, really nice move today along with the NASDAQ, right? And so it is up 7%. So for any of you who are looking to potentially buy into long-term, investments, I'm not saying now is the best time to buy in, but now, as you guys know, deals haven't been this low in a year, right? So the deals that Tesla's at right now is the lowest it's been in a year. Not just Tesla, big companies like Apple. Apple is almost at its low on the year, right? Facebook, lots of these. Oh, I don't know why Facebook's not popping up, right? Well, it's Meta now, right? Meta is at the lowest it's been in a year right now. So lots of these big companies, right, have been absolutely tanking, right, because of the NASDAQ dropping and all the economic issues, right? They've been tanking the price of these big stocks down. So there's only a matter of time before these things end up recovering, right? And when they do, the potential that they offer is ridiculous, right? So it's very attractive. It's something that I definitely wanted to bring to your attention, right? So if you guys are, those people who do like to invest long term, right now is an amazing time to buy in my opinion. The markets can always continue to fall, take down the tech stocks with it, but as long as you're not, super heavily invested in something, as direction is not in our favor, right? Then it's only a matter of time for it to recover. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching the channel. If you guys are new to the channel, we really do appreciate you guys dropping a like and subscribing. But other than that, if you guys have any questions at all, just go ahead and drop a comment and I'm more than happy to go ahead and answer that myself. Thank you guys so much. I will see you guys for my recap tomorrow. But yeah, until then, see you guys. Take care and have a good rest of your Monday.